In a classroom, a cruel teacher cuts a girl's hair to humiliate her, unaware of her powerful family. Like and subscribe now to see her incredible rise in our latest video. And don't miss what's next. The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow through the windows of Oakridge High School, its golden light filtering through the dusty blinds of room 204, a classroom that buzzed with the restless energy of teenagers waiting for the final bell, the air thick with the scent of chalk and old textbooks. The walls lined with faded posters of historical figures and motivational quotes. But for Kemi Adeyemi, a student of African descent, this room was a battlefield, a place where her dreams were mocked, her spirit tested, her very existence questioned. Kemi sat at the back of the class, her head bowed over a worn sketchbook, her fingers tracing the lines of a dress design she'd been working on all week, the fabric flowing in her imagination, a cascade of vibrant colors and bold patterns. She was a dreamer, a girl who saw beauty in the world and wanted to create it with her own hands. Her love for fashion had started young, inspired by her mother's old sewing machine and the stories of her grandfather, a legendary actor whose name once lit up Hollywood. But at Oakridge High, her passion was a target. Her classmates, a mix of curious and cruel, often snickered at her sketches. "You really think you're going to be a designer?" a girl named Sarah would say, her tone dripping with sarcasm, her friends giggling beside her, their eyes glinting with malice. Kemi would shrink in her seat, her hands clutching her sketchbook tighter, her heart sinking with every word. She wanted to fight back, to tell them they were wrong, but the fear of standing out, of being seen as even more different, kept her silent. Her braids, long and intricately woven, fell over her shoulders, a source of pride that connected her to her heritage. But even that was a point of ridicule. "Why don't you just straighten it?" another classmate, Jake, had once asked, his tone casual but cutting. Kemi had forced a smile, her throat tight. "I like it this way," she'd mumbled. But the laughter that followed had burned in her chest, a reminder of how little she belonged, the worst of the mockery. However, came from her teacher, Ms. Karen Whitmore, a tall, imposing woman with a sharp tongue and an even sharper temper. Ms. Whitmore was the kind of teacher who thrived on control, her crisp white blouse and neatly pinned hair, a facade for the cruelty that lay beneath. She had taken an immediate dislike to Kemi, her disdain evident in the way she'd sneer at Kemi's sketches. "Daydreaming again, Miss Adeyemi?" she'd say, her voice cold and mocking. "You'd do better to focus on something realistic. Fashion isn't for girls like you." The words stung, each one a dagger to Kemi's fragile confidence. But she held onto her dream, clutching it like a lifeline, even as the weight of Whitmore's scorn pressed down on her. Kemi's only solace was her best friend, Tiana, a quiet girl with a kind heart who shared her love for creativity. Tiana would sit beside her during lunch. The two of them huddled over Kemi's sketchbook, Tiana's eyes lighting up at each new design. "This is amazing, Kemi," she'd say, her voice warm. "You're going to be a star one day." Kemi would smile, her heart lifting at the encouragement, but the doubt always crept back in. What if Ms. Whitmore was right? What if her dreams were too big, too unreachable? What if she was setting herself up for failure? Those thoughts plagued her, keeping her up at night, her sketchbook a constant companion as she poured her hopes into every line, every stitch, every dream. But the cruelty at school only grew. Miss Whitmore's comments became more biting, her classmates' taunts more brazen. One day, during a group project, Sarah had grabbed Kemi's sketchbook, flipping through it with a smirk. "Look at this. She actually thinks she's going to be the next big designer," she'd said, tossing the book to Jake, who laughed and added, "Yeah, maybe for the discount rack." The class had erupted into laughter, Miss Whitmore watching from her desk with a thin smile, her silence a tacit approval of their cruelty. Kemi had felt her face burn, her hands trembling as she retrieved her sketchbook, the pages crumpled, her dreams tarnished by their mockery. She wanted to disappear, to run from the room and never come back. But she stayed, her pride refusing to let them see her break. Little did she know, the worst was yet to come, a moment of public humiliation that would push her to her breaking point. A moment that would change everything, setting the stage for a reckoning that would shake Oakridge High to its core. The morning air in room 204 at Oakridge High School was heavy with tension. The faint hum of the air conditioning unit barely audible over the restless chatter of students settling into their seats. The classroom's fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow on the rows of desks, their surfaces scratched and worn from years of use. Kemi sat at the back, her sketchbook open in front of her, her fingers nervously tracing the outline of a dress she'd designed the night before. A flowing gown with intricate beadwork that shimmered in her imagination. Her braids fell over her shoulders, their ends brushing against the paper, a quiet reminder of her heritage, her strength, but also her vulnerability in a place that had never felt safe. Her classmates' laughter filled the room, a mix of casual banter and pointed jabs. Sarah, the ringleader of Kemi's tormentors, sat a few rows ahead, her blonde hair tied back in a high ponytail. Her voice sharp as she whispered something to Jake, her eyes darting back to Kemi with a smirk. Kemi tried to focus on her sketch, her heart pounding. She knew that look. It was the look of someone planning to strike. The classroom door swung open, and Ms. Karen Whitmore strode in, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor, her crisp white blouse and navy skirt a stark contrast to the stormy expression on her face. Her gray eyes scanned the room, landing on Kemi with a sneer that made Kemi's stomach churn. "Settle down, everyone," Miss Whitmore barked, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The students fell silent, their attention snapping to the front, but Kemi could feel the weight of Miss Whitmore's gaze, a predator sizing up its prey. "We're starting with a discussion on career goals today," Ms. Whitmore announced, her tone laced with a false cheer that didn't reach her eyes. She picked up a stack of papers from her desk, her movements deliberate. "I want each of you to share what you hope to do after high school, and I expect realistic answers." The word realistic hung in the air, a pointed jab aimed directly at Kemi, who sank lower in her seat, her hands clutching her sketchbook. The class went around the room, students sharing their dreams with varying degrees of confidence. Jake wanted to be a mechanic. Sarah dreamed of becoming a lawyer. Each answer met with a nod or a curt comment from Ms. Whitmore. But when it was Kemi's turn, the air shifted, the teacher's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a thin smile. "Miss Adeyemi," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "What about you?" Kemi's throat tightened, her hands trembling as she spoke. I want to be a fashion designer," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but clear enough for the room to hear. A ripple of laughter spread through the class, Sarah and Jake exchanging amused glances. Ms. Whitmore's smile widened, her eyes glinting with malice. "A fashion designer?" she repeated, her tone mocking. "That's quite the fantasy, man, isn't it? Do you really think someone like you could make it in that world?" The laughter grew louder, Kemi's face burning with shame, her hands gripping her sketchbook so tightly her knuckles whitened. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor and never resurface. But Ms. Whitmore wasn't done. She walked down the aisle, her heels clicking ominously, stopping beside Kemi's desk. "Let's see this little dream of yours," she said, snatching the sketchbook from Kemi's hands before she could react. Kemi's heart stopped, her voice a desperate plea. "Please, don't." But Ms. Whitmore ignored her, flipping through the pages with a sneer. "What is this supposed to be?" she asked, holding up a sketch of a gown, her voice loud enough for the whole class to hear. "You think this is fashion? It's a mess, just like you." The class erupted into laughter, Sarah and Jake doubling over, their mockery a cruel chorus that drowned out Kemi's silent plea. Tears stung Kemi's eyes, her hands shaking. But Ms. Whitmore's cruelty had only just begun. She reached into her desk drawer, pulling out a pair of scissors, their metal glinting under the fluorescent lights. "You know what, Miss Adeyemi," she said, her voice low and menacing. maybe it's time you stopped hiding behind these childish dreams. And behind this, she gestured to Kemi's braids, her tone dripping with disdain. Before Kemi could react, Miss Whitmore grabbed a handful of her braids, the scissors flashing as she cut through them with a sickening snip. The strands fell to the floor, a cascade of black against the white tiles. The class gasped, their laughter replaced by stunned silence. Kemi's hands flew to her head, her fingers trembling as she felt the jagged ends of her hair, her vision blurring with tears. Maybe now you'll focus on something more practical, Miss Whitmore said, her voice cold, tossing the scissors onto her desk with a clatter. Kemi couldn't breathe, her chest tight with a mix of shock and humiliation. The room spun around her, the faces of her classmates a blur of wide eyes and open mouths. Sarah's smirk faltered. Jake looked away. Even Tiana, who sat frozen in her seat, had tears in her eyes. Kemi wanted to scream, to run, to make Miss Whitmore feel the pain she'd inflicted. But all she could do was sit there, her hands clutching the remains of her braids, her heart shattered. The bell rang, a sharp, jarring sound that broke the silence. Students filed out of the room, their whispers following them. "I can't believe she did that," one girl muttered. "That was so messed up," another added. But Kemi didn't move, her body rooted to the chair, her mind replaying the moment over and over. Ms. Whitmore gathered her things, her expression unreadable, as if she hadn't just destroyed a piece of Kemi's identity. "Don't be late for your next class," she said, her voice devoid of remorse. And then she was gone, leaving Kemi alone with her pain. Tiana rushed to her side, her voice trembling. "Kemi, I'm so sorry. We need to tell someone." Kemi nodded, her tears falling freely now. She didn't know how she'd face the rest of the day, the rest of her life, with this scar. But as she gathered her things, her sketchbook now a painful reminder of her dreams, she knew one thing for certain. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a fight for justice, for her dreams, for herself, and she wouldn't face it alone. The final bell of the day rang through the halls of Oakridge High, its sharp chime a hollow echo in Kemi's ears as she sat motionless in the empty classroom, her hands still clutching the jagged ends of her braids, the strands on the floor a cruel reminder of Ms. Whitmore's brutality. The room was silent now, the laughter and whispers of her classmates long gone, but the weight of their stares lingered, a suffocating prison that made Kemi's chest ache. Her sketchbook lay open on the desk, its pages crumpled from Ms. Whitmore's careless handling, the gown she'd designed now a painful symbol of her shattered dreams. Tears streamed down her face, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. She felt broken, humiliated, stripped of the one thing that had always made her feel connected to her heritage, her identity. Tiana had stayed with her, her gentle hand resting on Kemi's shoulder. "We need to tell someone, Kemi," she said again, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and sorrow. "This isn't right. She can't get away with this." Kemi nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She knew Tiana was right. She couldn't let Ms. Whitmore's cruelty go unanswered. But the thought of facing her, of facing anyone, felt impossible. Her hands shook as she gathered her things, stuffing her sketchbook into her backpack, her movements mechanical, her mind a storm of pain and resolve. She didn't know how she'd find the strength, but she knew she had to. That evening, Kemi sat at the dinner table in her family's modest home, the warm glow of the kitchen light doing little to ease the chill in her heart. Her parents, noticing her red eyes and the uneven ends of her braids, immediately sensed something was wrong. "Kemi, baby, what happened?" her mother asked, her voice soft but urgent, her father's brow furrowed, his hands pausing mid-bite. Kemi tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat, tears spilling over as she recounted the day's events, her voice breaking as she described Ms. Whitmore's mocking words, the scissors, the cut, the humiliation. Her mother's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror, her father's jaw clenched, his anger palpable. But before they could respond, The front door opened, and Kemi's grandfather stepped inside. Malcolm Adeyemi, a towering figure with a presence that commanded respect. His dark eyes sharp and knowing. His silver hair a crown of wisdom earned through decades in Hollywood. Malcolm was a legend. An actor whose roles had broken barriers, whose name still echoed in the industry. He had been a distant but loving figure in Kemi's life, always encouraging her dreams. But tonight his visit was unannounced, his expression darkening as he took in the scene. "What's going on here?" he asked, his deep voice a steady anchor in the storm of emotions. Kemi's mother explained, her voice trembling with rage. Her teacher cut her hair, Malcolm, right in front of the class to humiliate her. Malcolm's eyes narrowed, a fire igniting behind them. He knelt beside Kemi, his large hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Is this true, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice soft but laced with a quiet fury. Kemi nodded, her tears falling faster. "She said I'd never be a designer, that I should stop dreaming," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Malcolm's jaw tightened, his hand squeezing her shoulder. "She was wrong," he said, his tone unwavering, "and she'll answer for this." The next morning, the halls of Oakridge High buzzed with the usual chaos of students, but a different energy crackled through the air as Malcolm Adeyemi walked through the front doors. His tailored suit a stark contrast to the casual attire of the school staff, his presence commanding, his steps purposeful. Kemi walked beside him, her head down, her uneven braids hidden under a scarf, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. Students stopped in their tracks, their whispers following them. "Is that Malcolm Adeyemi?" one girl gasped. "The actor?" another added, their voices a mix of awe and disbelief. Malcolm led Kemi to the principal's office, his expression unreadable, but his determination clear. Principal Harris, a middle-aged man with a nervous smile, stood to greet them. "Mr. Adeyemi, this is an honor," he began, but Malcolm cut him off, his voice low and firm. "This isn't a social visit. Harris, my granddaughter was assaulted by one of your teachers, and I want to know what you're going to do about it." Principal Harris's smile faltered, his hands fidgeting as Kemi recounted the incident. Her voice trembling but steady. Malcolm's presence gave her strength, a shield against the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. When she finished, Principal Harris's face was pale, his voice stammering. I had no idea. We'll investigate immediately." But Malcolm wasn't satisfied. "I want to speak to this teacher. Now," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Ms. Whitmore was summoned to the office, her heels clicking as she entered, her expression a mix of confusion and defiance. But when she saw Malcolm, her confidence wavered. "Mr. Adeyemi," she said, her voice faltering. "I didn't know." Malcolm cut her off, his voice a low growl. "You didn't know Kemi was my granddaughter, but you knew she was a student, a child, and you chose to humiliate her, to cut her hair, to mock her dreams. Ms. Whitmore's face flushed, her hands trembling. "I was trying to teach her to be realistic," she stammered, but Malcolm's eyes flashed with anger. "You don't get to decide what's realistic for her," he said, his voice rising. "Kemi has more talent, more heart, more strength than you'll ever understand, and you tried to break her, but you failed." The room fell silent, the weight of Malcolm's words hanging heavy. Principal Harris stepped in, his voice shaky. "Miss Whitmore, you're suspended pending a full investigation. This behavior is unacceptable." Miss Whitmore's face crumpled, her defiance crumbling under the scrutiny. She turned to leave, her head bowed, but Malcolm's voice stopped her. "You'll never teach here again," he said, his tone final. Kemi watched, her tears drying, her heart lifting. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, protected, powerful, and as Malcolm turned to her, his eyes softening, "You're stronger than they know, Kemi," he said, "and I'm going to make sure the world sees it." And she knew this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where she'd rise, not just for herself, but for every dreamer who had ever been told they couldn't. The morning after Malcolm Adeyemi's confrontation shook Oakridge High to its core. The school's atmosphere was charged with a nervous energy, whispers echoing through the halls as students gathered in clusters, their voices a mix of awe and disbelief. The news of Ms. Whitmore's suspension had spread like wildfire. Her absence from room 204 a stark reminder of the reckoning she'd faced. A substitute teacher stood at the front of the class, her demeanor hesitant as she tried to maintain order. But the students' attention was elsewhere, their eyes darting to Kemi, who sat quietly at the back, her scarf still hiding the jagged ends of her braids, her sketchbook closed on her desk. She felt the weight of their stares, a mix of curiosity and guilt. But for the first time, she didn't shrink under their gaze. Her grandfather's words from the day before echoed in her mind. "You're stronger than they know," he'd said. And Kemi held on to that, a lifeline in the storm of her emotions. The school administration moved quickly to address the incident. Principal Harris called an emergency assembly that afternoon. The auditorium filled with the hum of hundreds of students, their chatter a low buzz as they waited for the principal to speak. Kemi sat near the front with Tiana, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her heart pounding. Malcolm stood backstage, his presence a quiet force, his tailored suit a symbol of the power he wielded, not just as a celebrity, but as a protector. Principal Harris stepped onto the stage, his face pale, his voice steady but strained. "Students, we're here to address a serious incident that occurred yesterday," he began, his words cutting through the noise. "One of our teachers, Ms. Whitmore, acted in a way that was unacceptable. She humiliated a student, violated her dignity, and betrayed the values of this school. Effective immediately, she has been terminated." A gasp rippled through the crowd, students exchanging wide-eyed glances. Kemi felt a weight lift from her chest, her breath catching as the reality sank in. Miss Whitmore was gone, her cruelty no longer a shadow over Kemi's dreams. Principal Harris continued, his tone firm. "We've also identified several students who participated in or enabled this behavior. They will be required to issue a public apology and attend sensitivity training." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Sarah and Jake, who sat near the back, their faces flushed with shame, their usual confidence replaced by a nervous unease. Sarah's hands fidgeted in her lap. Jake's head bowed, voiding the stares of their peers. The principal gestured to them. "Sarah, Jake, please come forward." The two stood, their steps hesitant as they walked to the stage, their eyes darting nervously to the crowd. Sarah spoke first, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Kemi," she said, her words barely audible. "I shouldn't have laughed. I shouldn't have made fun of your sketches. I was wrong." Jake followed, his voice equally shaky. "I'm sorry too. I didn't realize how much we were hurting you." Kemi listened, her expression unreadable. She wanted to believe their apologies were sincere, but the pain they'd caused ran deep. She nodded, her voice soft but firm. "Thank you for saying that, but I need time," the crowd murmured, some students nodding in understanding, others whispering their support. Principal Harris stepped back, gesturing to Malcolm. "We're honored to have Mr. Malcolm Adeyemi with us today," he said. "He's here to speak on behalf of his granddaughter." Malcolm stepped onto the stage, his presence commanding, his deep voice resonating through the auditorium. "I've spent my life fighting for respect, for dignity, for the right to be seen," he began, his words a powerful wave that silenced the room. What happened to Kemi isn't just an attack on her. It's an attack on every student who has ever been told they don't belong, who has ever been mocked for their dreams, their heritage, their very existence. The students listened, their faces a mix of awe and reflection. Malcolm's eyes softened as he looked at Kemi. "My granddaughter is a dreamer, a creator, a force. She wants to design fashion that tells stories, that celebrates her culture, and no one, not a teacher, not a classmate, has the right to take that from her. The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers a testament to the impact of his words. Kemi felt tears prick her eyes, her heart swelling with pride. Her grandfather's support, a shield she hadn't known she needed. Malcolm continued, his voice rising with passion. Respect isn't a privilege, it's a right. And if you take nothing else from today, take this. Lift each other up. Celebrate each other's dreams. Because when you tear someone down, you tear down a piece of the future. The auditorium roared with applause, students standing, clapping, some wiping tears from their eyes. Kemi stood too, her scarf slipping slightly, revealing the uneven ends of her braids. But she didn't hide, not anymore. She felt seen, heard, valued. And as the assembly ended, students approached her, their voices soft, their apologies genuine. "I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner," one girl said, her eyes downcast. "You didn't deserve that," another added. Kemi nodded, her heart warming at the unexpected support. She knew healing would take time, but this was a start. A step toward a school where she could be herself without fear. That evening, Kemi sat in her room, her sketchbook open in front of her, her grandfather's words still echoing in her mind. Malcolm sat beside her, his presence a quiet comfort. "You're going to do great things, Kemi," he said, his voice warm. "But you need to believe it too." Kemi looked at him, her eyes shining with determination. "I do," she said, her voice steady. "I'm not going to let anyone stop me." Malcolm smiled, his pride evident. "That's my girl," he said. And in that moment, Kemi felt a fire ignite within her, a fire that would carry her forward, through the pain, through the doubt, toward a future where her dreams would shine, where her designs would tell stories, where she would prove that no one could ever dim her light again. Now, in the weeks following the assembly at Oakridge High marked a turning point for Kemi. The air in the school felt lighter. The whispers that once carried mockery now held a hint of respect. The absence of Ms. Whitmore was a quiet victory. Her classroom, now led by a new teacher, Miss Rivera, a warm and encouraging woman who noticed Kemi's sketchbook on the first day and smiled. "You have a gift," she said, her voice genuine. Kemi felt a flicker of hope, a small spark that had been buried under years of doubt. She sat at her desk, her scarf still covering the uneven ends of her braids, but her shoulders were a little straighter, her eyes a little brighter. She was beginning to see herself through her grandfather's eyes, as a dreamer, a creator, a force. The support from her peers grew steadily. Students who had once laughed at her now offered shy smiles in the hallways. Some even stopped to apologize. "I didn't realize how much we hurt you," a girl named Emily said one day, her voice soft. "I'm really sorry." Kemi nodded, her heart warming at the sincerity. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady. She wasn't ready to forget the past, but she was ready to move forward, to build something new. Tiana remained her rock, her best friend's unwavering support a constant source of strength. "You're going to be amazing, Kemi," Tiana said during lunch, her eyes shining with pride. "I can't wait to see your designs on a runway someday." Kemi smiled, her heart swelling. "I'm getting there, Tiana," she said. And for the first time, she believed it. Her grandfather, Malcolm, had made good on his promise to help her shine. He enrolled her in a local weekend fashion design workshop, a program for young creatives led by a renowned designer named Elise Monroe. Kemi was nervous on her first day, her backpack heavy with her sketchbook and a small sewing kit, her scarf still in place, a reminder of the scars she carried. But as she stepped into the workshop, a bright, airy studio filled with fabric swatches, sewing machines, and the hum of creative energy, she felt a sense of belonging she'd never known. Elise, a tall woman with a commanding presence and a warm smile, greeted her. "Welcome, Kemi," she said, her voice rich with encouragement. "Your grandfather tells me you're a visionary. Let's see what you've got." Kemi hesitated, her hands trembling as she opened her sketchbook. the pages filled with designs she'd poured her heart into. Elise studied them, her eyes lighting up. "These are incredible," she said, her tone genuine. "You have a unique voice, a story in every stitch." Kemi felt a rush of pride, her cheeks flushing. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Over the next few weeks, Kemi threw herself into the workshop, learning the basics of pattern making, fabric selection, and garment construction. Her fingers grew nimble with a needle and thread, her mind buzzing with ideas. She designed a dress inspired by her heritage, a vibrant piece with bold Ankara prints and intricate beadwork. Each stitch a celebration of her roots, her identity. The process was healing, each cut of fabric, each seam, a way to reclaim the pieces of herself Ms. Whitmore had tried to take. She worked late into the evenings, her bedroom transformed into a mini studio, fabric scraps scattered across her desk, her sewing machine humming softly. Her parents watched her transformation with awe. "You're glowing, baby bone," her mother said one night, her voice filled with pride. Her father nodded. "You're unstoppable," he added, and Kemi felt their words settle deep in her heart, a reminder of the strength she'd always had. At school, Kemi began to share her designs more openly, her confidence growing with each passing day. She brought her sketchbook to art class, where Miss Rivera encouraged her to display her work. "You should show these to the class," she said, her tone warm. Kemi hesitated, the memory of Ms. Whitmore's mockery still fresh, but she took a deep breath, her hands steady as she held up a sketch of her Ankara dress. "This is something I've been working on," she said, her voice clear. The class fell silent, their eyes wide with curiosity. And then, to her surprise, they clapped, their applause genuine. "That's so cool," a boy named Marcus said, his tone sincere. "You're really talented." Kemi felt a warmth spread through her chest, her smile genuine. "Thank you," she said, her voice stronger now. Even Sarah, who had once led the charge against her, approached her after class. "I didn't know you were this good," she said, her voice hesitant. I'm sorry for what I did." Kemi nodded, her heart softening. "I appreciate that," she replied. And while forgiveness would take time, she felt a small sense of closure, a sign that things were truly changing. Kemi's confidence began to shine in other ways. She started experimenting with her style, wearing bold colors and patterns that reflected her designs. Her scarf came off, revealing her shortened braids, which she'd had styled into a chic bob with the help of her mother. She walked through the halls of Oakridge High with her head held high, her steps purposeful, her presence a quiet defiance of the girl she used to be. Students noticed, their whispers now ones of admiration. "She looks amazing," one girl said to her friend. "I heard she's taking design classes," another added. Kemi heard them, her heart lifting. She was no longer the girl who hid. She was the girl who created, who dreamed, who stood tall. And as she worked on her designs, her hands steady, her mind clear, she felt a fire growing within her, a fire fueled by her grandfather's belief, her own resilience, her unyielding passion. She knew the road ahead would be long, that there would be more challenges, more doubts. But she was ready to face them with the strength she'd rediscovered. The strength that had always been there, waiting for her to claim it. Kemi was no longer just a dreamer. She was a designer, a creator, a force. And she was just getting started. So the auditorium at Oakridge High buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with the scent of fresh paint and fabric dye. A vibrant energy pulsing through the space as students and faculty gathered for the school's annual talent showcase. This year, the event included a special edition, a student fashion design competition, a platform for young creatives to display their work. The stage was transformed into a makeshift runway, lined with bright lights and draped in black velvet. A banner overhead reading Oakridge Creativity Spotlight in bold letters. Kemi stood backstage, her heart pounding, her hands clutching a garment bag that held her prized creation. a dress she'd poured her soul into over the past month. Her bob haircut framed her face, her eyes shining with a mix of nerves and determination. She wore a simple black outfit, her focus entirely on the moment ahead. Tiana stood beside her, her smile a steady source of comfort. "You've got this, Kemi," she whispered. Squeezing her hand, Kemi nodded, her breath shaky. "I hope so," she replied, her voice soft but resolute. She had come a long way since the day Ms. Whitmore cut her hair, since the assembly where her grandfather had stood up for her, and now she was ready to show the world what she could do. The competition was fierce. Several students had entered, including Sarah, who had taken up sewing as part of her sensitivity training. Her designs polished but predictable, lacking the depth Kemi brought to her work. Kemi had spent weeks preparing, her evenings filled with the hum of her sewing machine, her fingers aching from hours of stitching. Her dress was a celebration of her heritage, a vibrant Ankara print gown with intricate beadwork that shimmered under the light, each detail a story of resilience, of pride, of identity. She had named it Legacy, a tribute to her grandfather's legacy and her own journey. The event began, the auditorium lights dimming as the host, Ms. Rivera, stepped onto the stage, her voice warm and enthusiastic. "Welcome to the Oakridge Creativity Spotlight," she announced, the crowd erupting into applause. "Tonight, we'll see the incredible talents of our students, starting with our fashion design competition." The audience cheered, their excitement palpable. Kemi peeked through the curtain, her heart racing as she saw the crowd. Her parents and Malcolm seated in the front row, their faces alight with pride. Malcolm's presence a quiet reassurance, a reminder of the strength she carried. The first few contestants went, their designs a mix of modern trends and experimental concepts. Sarah's piece, a sleek white dress, earned polite applause, but lacked the emotional depth Kemi knew her own work held. When it was Kemi's turn, the host called her name. "Next up, Kemi Adeyemi with her design, Legacy." The crowd murmured, their curiosity piqued. Kemi took a deep breath, her hands steady as she stepped onto the stage, the spotlight blinding, the weight of hundreds of eyes pressing down on her. But she didn't falter. She unzipped the garment bag, revealing her dress to the audience, the vibrant colors catching the light, the beadwork sparkling like stars. A gasp rippled through the crowd, their awe evident. Kemi spoke, her voice clear and strong. "This dress is called Legacy," she began, her words carrying a quiet power. "It's inspired by my heritage, by the strength of my family, by the journey I've taken to stand here today. It's a reminder that our stories, our cultures, our dreams are worth celebrating." The audience listened, their silence a testament to the impact of her words. Kemi stepped back, and a student model emerged, wearing the dress with grace, the fabric flowing as she walked the runway, the Ankara print a burst of color against the black velvet. The beadwork catching the light with every step. The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers a wave of support that filled the auditorium. Kemi felt her chest swell with pride, her eyes shining with tears of joy. She had done it. She had shown them all what she was capable of. The judges, a panel of local artists and designers, deliberated as the final contestants presented. Kemi stood backstage, her hands clasped tightly, her heart pounding. Tiana hugged her. "That was incredible." "Ashim," she whispered. "No matter what happens, you're a star." Kemi smiled, her nerves easing. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady. She knew she'd given her all, and that was enough. Mrs. Rivera returned to the stage, a small envelope in her hand. "After careful consideration," she said, her voice ringing with excitement, "the winner of the Oakridge Fashion Design Competition is Kemi Adeyemi." The auditorium exploded with cheers, students jumping to their feet, clapping and whistling. Kemi's breath caught in her throat, her hands flying to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Tiana pulled her into a tight hug. "I knew it." "Ah," she cried, her voice muffled by Kemi's shoulder. Kemi made her way to the stage, her legs shaky, the spotlight warm on her skin. She took the microphone, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you," she said, her words barely audible over the applause. "This means everything to me. I hope I can inspire others to chase their dreams, no matter what." The crowd cheered even louder. Malcolm stood, his applause the loudest, his eyes shining with pride. Sarah, who had watched from the sidelines, approached Kemi after the ceremony, her expression a mix of awe and remorse. "Your dress was beautiful," she said, her voice soft. I'm happy for you." Kemi nodded, her heart softening. "Thank you, Sarah," she replied. The moment a small step toward healing. The victory wasn't just about the competition, it was about Kemi reclaiming her voice, her passion, her place. She had turned her pain into art, her humiliation into triumph. And as she stood on the stage, the crowd's cheers washing over her, she felt a fire within her, a fire that would carry her forward, toward a future where her designs would tell stories, where her dreams would soar, where she would prove that no one could ever dim her light again. The days following Kemi's victory at the Oakridge High fashion design competition were a whirlwind of change. The school's halls buzzed with a new energy, the once familiar whispers of mockery now replaced by murmurs of admiration. Kemi walked through the corridors with a quiet confidence, her bob haircut framing her face, her outfit a vibrant mix of patterns that reflected her growing sense of self, her sketchbook tucked under her arm, no longer a secret, but a badge of honor. Students who had once ignored her now stopped to offer congratulations, their smiles genuine, their words kind. "Your dress was incredible," a girl named Lila said, her tone warm. "I didn't know you were so talented." Kemi smiled, her heart lifting. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady. The support was overwhelming, a stark contrast to the isolation she'd felt just months before. Even Sarah and Jake, who had once led the charge against her, kept their distance, their heads bowed in the halls, their apologies at the assembly, a turning point that had humbled them. The school itself seemed to shift. Principal Harris, spurred by Malcolm's speech and Kemi's triumph, implemented new policies to promote inclusivity. Sensitivity training became mandatory for all students, and a diversity council was formed, with Kemi invited to join as a student representative. She accepted, her voice now a part of the change she'd longed to see. Miss Rivera, her new art teacher, became a mentor, encouraging Kemi to showcase more of her designs. "You have a gift, Kemi," she said during class, her eyes bright with pride. "Don't ever stop creating." Kemi nodded, her resolve strengthening. She felt seen, valued, a feeling she'd never thought possible at Oakridge High. Inspired by her win, Kemi decided to take her passion a step further. She organized a small exhibition in the school's art room, a space where she could display her designs and share her story. She worked tirelessly, hanging sketches on the walls, draping fabric swatches over tables, setting up a mannequin to showcase her winning dress. Legacy, the vibrant Ankara print glowing under the soft lights. She titled the exhibition Threads of Strength, a nod to the resilience woven into every piece. The event was open to the entire school, and to Kemi's surprise, it drew a crowd. Students and teachers alike filled the room, their voices a hum of awe as they studied her work. Kemi stood near the entrance, her hands clasped nervously, her eyes scanning the crowd, Tiana by her side. "This is amazing, Kemi," she whispered, her smile wide. Kemi nodded, her heart full. "I can't believe they came," she replied, her voice soft. Malcolm arrived, his presence commanding as always, his tailored suit a contrast to the casual attire of the students. He pulled Kemi into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you, Answem," he said, his voice warm. "You're showing them what's possible." Kemi felt tears prick her eyes, her grandfather's support a constant source of strength. The exhibition was more than a display of fashion. It was a lesson in resilience, in diversity, in the power of dreams. Kemi spoke to the crowd, her voice clear and confident. "Every design here tells a story," she said, her words echoing through the room. "They're about where I come from, what I've been through, and what I believe in. I want you to know that your story matters too. Your dreams matter. Don't let anyone take that from you." The crowd clapped, their applause a wave of support. Students approached her afterward, their voices soft, their stories spilling out. "I've always wanted to paint, but I was scared," a boy named Daniel said, his tone hesitant. "You've inspired me to try." Kemi smiled, her heart swelling. "You should," she replied. "You'll be amazing." The exhibition became a catalyst for change, a space where students felt safe to share their passions, to celebrate their identities. Kemi's influence grew, her story spreading beyond the school. Local news outlets picked up on the exhibition, running a feature on her journey. From bullying to brilliance, Oakridge students' fashion triumph. The headline read, the article detailed her struggle, her grandfather's intervention, her victory, and her message of resilience. Kemi's social media buzzed with messages of support. Young creatives from across the country reaching out. "You've given me hope," one wrote. "I thought I'd never fit in, but you showed me I can." Kemi read each message, her heart full. She was no longer just a girl with a dream. She was a symbol of possibility, a beacon for those who felt unseen. At school, Kemi continued to grow. She started a small fashion club with Tiana, a space where students could explore design, sewing, and creativity. The club became a haven for those who, like Kemi, had once felt out of place. They worked on group projects, designing outfits for school events, their laughter filling the art room, a sound that had once been foreign to Kemi. Sarah joined the club, her presence tentative at first, but her effort to change evident. "I want to learn," she said, her voice soft. "I want to be better." Kemi nodded, her heart softening. "We'll learn together," she replied. The moment a small but significant step toward healing, Kemi's designs continued to evolve. Her sketchbook filled with new ideas, each one bolder, more confident. She began experimenting with sustainable fabrics, her work a blend of culture and innovation. Rivera connected her with a local designer who offered to mentor her. "You have a future in this," the designer said, her tone earnest. Kemi felt a fire within her, a fire that had been ignited by pain but fueled by passion. She knew her journey was just beginning, that there would be more challenges, more doubts, but she also knew she was ready to face them with the strength she'd found, the strength that had carried her from humiliation to triumph. Kemi had turned her pain into purpose, her dreams into reality, and in doing so, she had changed not just her own life, but the lives of those around her. She was no longer the girl who hid. She was the girl who inspired, who created, who rose. The soft glow of the studio lights bathed Kemi in a warm radiance, her vibrant yellow blazer a striking contrast against the sleek black backdrop, her bob haircut framing her face, her eyes bright with a quiet confidence that had become her hallmark. She sat in a plush chair, her hands resting calmly in her lap, her smile genuine as she faced the camera for a local news interview. The host, a woman named Lauren Hayes with a warm demeanor, leaned forward, her voice steady and engaging. "Kemi, your story has inspired so many, from being bullied at school to becoming a rising star in fashion design. What message do you have for young dreamers watching right now?" Kemi took a deep breath, her mind flashing back to the girl she used to be, the girl who hid her sketches, who cried in the classroom, who felt her dreams were impossible. "I want them to know that their dreams are worth fighting for," she said, her voice clear and resonant. "No matter what anyone says, no matter how hard it gets, you have the power to rise above. Your passion, your story, your identity. They're your strength. Don't let anyone take that away." The studio audience erupted into applause, their cheers a testament to the power of her words. Lauren nodded, her eyes shining with admiration. "That's incredible, Kemi," she said. "And what about those who feel they don't have the support you did? What would you say to them?" Kemi's expression softened, her voice warm with empathy. "Support can come from within," she replied. "Believe in yourself, find your community, even if it's just one person who believes in you, and keep creating, keep dreaming, because that's how you'll find your place." The crowd clapped again, their faces alight with inspiration, and Kemi felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing her story was touching lives far beyond Oakridge High. The interview marked a new chapter in Kemi's journey, one that had begun with pain but ended with purpose. In the months following her victory at the school's fashion competition, Kemi's career had taken off. Her exhibition, Threads of Strength, had caught the attention of a prestigious design program for young talents. They offered her a scholarship to join their summer intensive, a chance to learn from industry professionals and showcase her work on a larger stage. Kemi had accepted, her heart racing with excitement. The program was a whirlwind of creativity. Her days filled with workshops on advanced design techniques, her evenings spent sketching under the guidance of mentors who saw her potential. She created a small collection, a series of pieces that blended her cultural heritage with modern sustainability, each design a story of resilience and innovation. The program culminated in a showcase, where Kemi's collection was met with standing ovations, her name whispered as a rising star. The experience solidified her dream. She knew this was her path, her calling, and she was ready to chase it with everything she had. Back at Oakridge High, Kemi's influence continued to grow. Her fashion club had become a cornerstone of the school's creative community, a space where students of all backgrounds came together to design, to dream, to support each other. Kemi mentored younger members, her voice a steady guide. "Your ideas matter," she'd tell them, her tone warm. "Don't be afraid to share them." The club organized a spring fashion show, a celebration of diversity where every student's work was showcased. Kemi walked the runway in her own design, a flowing gown with intricate embroidery, the crowd cheering as she moved with grace, her smile radiant. Malcolm watched from the audience, his pride evident, his applause the loudest. Kemi's story reached beyond the school. Her interview with Lauren Hayes went viral. Hashtags like #KemiCreates and #DreamsUnbroken trending online. Young designers from across the country reached out, sharing how her journey had inspired them to pursue their own passions. Kemi read their messages, her heart full. She responded to as many as she could, her words a beacon of hope. "Keep going, Mom," she wrote. "You've got this." Her designs began to gain recognition. A local boutique offered to sell a small line of her pieces, her first step into the professional world. Kemi worked tirelessly, her bedroom a studio of fabric and thread, her parents watching with awe as their daughter's dreams took flight. "You're unstoppable," her father said one evening, his voice thick with emotion. Her mother nodded. "You've made us so proud." Kemi smiled, her heart full. She knew she owed so much to her family, to Malcolm, whose intervention had given her the strength to rise. But she also knew she owed it to herself, to the girl who had refused to give up. Months later, Kemi stood on the stage of a regional design festival, her first major event as a young designer. The lights were blinding, the music pulsing, the crowd a sea of faces watching her every move. She presented her collection, a series of pieces that told the story of her journey, from pain to triumph, from doubt to dreams. The final piece, a stunning gown in deep indigo, shimmered under the lights, its fabric a canvas of resilience. The audience stood, their applause a roaring wave. Kemi took a bow, her eyes shining with tears of joy. She felt powerful, unstoppable, a force. And as she looked out at the crowd, she saw Malcolm, her parents, Tiana, all of them cheering, their love a steady anchor. This was her moment, her victory, not just over the bullies, not just over the doubts, but over the idea that she had to dim her light to fit in. Kemi had created her own light, her own path, her own legacy, and as she stepped off the stage, her heart full, her mind at peace, she knew this was just the beginning, that there would be more challenges, more dreams to chase, but she was ready to face them with the strength she'd found, the strength that had carried her from a classroom of humiliation to a stage of celebration. Kemi had turned her pain into art, her story into inspiration, and in doing so, she had shown the world that dreams, no matter how big, were worth fighting for. Kemi overcame bullying to become a rising fashion designer, thanks to her legendary grandfather's support. Thank you for listening. Like and share this video if you're inspired, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to catch our latest stories of resilience and triumph.